Okay. Um, Welcome everyone. I'm Michelle Higelin from ActionAid Australia. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are on Indigenous land, the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. That's where I'm coming to you from, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and acknowledge that this will always be Aboriginal land. And if you would like any of our people who are joining online would like to reference where they're joining from and acknowledge land that they're on, please do so in the chat. A huge welcome to tonight's webinar, The War on Women in the Middle East. Thank you for taking time to join us. For those of you who are new to ActionAid, we are a global women's rights organisation working in more than 70 countries to end poverty and injustice. And we particularly support women on the front lines of conflict and crisis, including in Lebanon and Palestine, women who've been deeply impacted by the current crisis. As I'm sure all of you online have seen, more than 3 million people have been displaced in Iran, 1 million in Lebanon, since the US and Israel launched illegal attacks on Iran, which started on February 28th. And this obviously built on the already 2 million people in Gaza who have been displaced through 2.5 years of genocide. And while I think the news of a hopeful ceasefire came overnight, we've also seen increasing attacks in Lebanon, which I know Sabine will speak to later, but 250 people killed overnight. So this conflict is far from over. ActionAid has also been deeply concerned to see that the Australian government was one of the first countries in the world to support illegal strikes. And has sent military assistance to the region. This is a large-scale humanitarian crisis that is having a significant impact on women and their families in the region. It's also having widespread impacts on people globally. As we know, it sparked an energy crisis, which we're even feeling here in our own country. And of course, we all see many men's voices in the media threatening war crimes, retaliatory strikes, using social media and mainstream media to amplify these violent threats. So tonight is, I would say, a refreshing opportunity to hear from women on the front lines of this crisis in Lebanon and Palestine, as well as hear how this is impacting on the Iranian diaspora in Australia. It's also a chance to bring onto the spotlight how this war is impacting women and girls in the region, and to discuss ways we can take action in response to this conflict. So without further ado, let me introduce our three incredible speakers. We're delighted to be joined by Mitra Khakbaz, who is an Iranian-Australian woman. I have had the privilege of working very closely with Mitra as a member of the steering committee for the Australian Civil Society Coalition on Women, Peace and Security. In her day job, Mitra is the CEO of the Immigrant Women's Support Service and is a seasoned advocate for positive social change with decades of experience working with women and multicultural communities in Australia. Welcome, Mitra.
Thanks very much, Michelle.
We're also joined by Sabine Abiaad, who is the Communications Coordinator at ActionAid Arab Region, and joining us from Lebanon, where she's been supporting ActionAid's emergency response, while also, of course, being among the affected community coming under relentless bombing and attacks in Lebanon. Welcome, Sabine.
Thank you. Happy to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks. And Soraida Hussein, who's the country coordinator for Palestine at ActionAid Spain, based in the West Bank of Palestine. She's a gender and advocacy expert with extensive experience working with women in Palestine, and has also been part of ActionAid's emergency response team responding to the crisis in both Gaza and the escalating situation in the West Bank. So let's get started, and welcome, Soraida. We'll get started. I have some questions that I'm going to ask these three incredible women, but please, if there's anything you would like to know, please share your questions in the chat. We will have time, hopefully, towards the end of the conversation, to also try and respond to some of the things that you would like to know about what's happening on the ground. But let's start with you, Mitra. I know you're in daily contact with your family in Iran. I guess I'm keen to hear, what are you hearing about the situation on the ground?
Thanks very much, Michelle. May I just start by also acknowledging traditional owners of the land. I'm joining you from the land of the Turrbal and Yagara people in Minjar, Brisbane. As we talk about the war in Middle East, I think I need to start by acknowledging the absence of the war doesn't mean peace. And in particular, as we talk about Iran, the population of Iran have been living on the tyranny of the regime that has been really making it difficult for the last 4 decades, but also in particular since the start of this year, killing over 40,000 people in 2 days, which has contributed to the how diaspora sees this war and how diaspora is engaged. For me as a peace advocate, I do have particular views, and I think your question is really good. Being in daily contact, I think it's only a dream that we as Iranian diaspora have at the moment. With the really massive internet blockade, with the blockage of the communication done by the regime, exacerbated by the bombing and infrastructure, and further being manifested into the media, the voice of the Iranian is being just minimized. The experience of Iranian has been minimized. This is 41 days of the absolute blockade. I mean, I actually, just before this, I have been very unlucky. My brother's house has been impacted on the second day of the war, and I lost a nephew through that, which today is 40 days of that, which is a significant day for us culturally, remembering what had happened. And I was actually surprised, through an app I was able to make a phone call, and it got connected, and I was able only to speak for 2 minutes, and then it got disconnected. I had put about $15 on, as was told. I ran out of the credit. So that's the real situation of people. The voices are being really minimized. However, if you look at Instagram and if you look at the X and those platforms, you see the voice of the pro-regime propaganda that comes out, which actually really impacts on how diaspora is able to voice that, and naturally creates that and polarize the views. As a anti-war and pro-peace person, I find those challenges and live with that. I want to acknowledge that. So with the ceasefire, which is not a real ceasefire, as we know, Iran has been attacking neighboring countries, and I'm just trebly ashamed of that. I'm trebly ashamed of the experience of my colleagues in Lebanon and Palestine, just as we were hearing 100 bombing in the last, in 10 minutes. These are significant challenges. However, those people that are able to jump online at times, that have the voices, are living between the fear of the bombing and the execution and persecution and the seizing of the belonging and the challenges and the life of the political prisoner that is actually being really living in vulnerability, and there is no protection. So I think one of the key things for me is the lack of accountability. There is no accountability for the war that has gone, but also for the system and processes existing within the country that actually make people more vulnerable. There is no siren. There is no warning. It's all, and I think for people living in Iran is about picking between the bombing and picking between the tyranny of the regime.
Thanks for sharing, Mitra. And I think all of us share our condolences for your loss. And I think it obviously just shows how personal, this kind of war is, and that it does cut across boundaries. And so, yeah, but also I think you really brought onto the table just some of these really challenging issues around being, pro-peace or anti-war, at the same time as being anti-regime, and sort of this dual threat from inside the country, and also,
they are not exclusionary. I think we
no.
can, and if the principle of the human rights leads our approach, is about that all lives matter and the impact of the war. Absolutely, Michelle.
Yeah. I guess I'm keen to hear, in terms of what you've been hearing on the ground about whether you are seeing sort of different impacts in terms of for women and girls and how this war is playing out, because we're just not hearing it. We're hearing very little from Iran, but definitely not very little gender analysis of how this war is being felt on the ground.
That's really, really a good question. Again, I was thinking about that, and I'm going to share maybe from a personal and then just look at it broader. My sister-in-law was in the room when it was attacked, and while she saw that and she was like, thinking of her child, she was impacted by the shrapnel and just like has glasses all over her body. It took about 30 days for her to be able to have access to medical support to do that. And when she attended to the hospital, she was actually refused access because she was asked that she needed to attend with the full burqa. And there has been women life freedom movement that has been trying to push the regime to easing it on women, to allow the choice. And there has been a lot of that happening. In the last 42 days, a lot of that has gone already lost. There is a lot of pressure. There is a lot of active engagement against this civilians around pressuring women into just not only going backward, but also limiting the access to the services and resources. They were able to just go somewhere else and get that support, but I think that's only one example. And Iran is a good example, but I think it's happening everywhere. And as you said earlier, we don't hear anything about the impact on women and children. We don't get any number about the death toll or the casualty. There is no gender visibility of all those impacts. We talk about 3 million people being impacted in the last 42 days. There is much more higher impact. All those infrastructure that have been impacted have had impact on people's livelihood. And not only petroleum industry, but also industry that comes out of that. All of that has significant impact on the life of the individuals.
Thanks, Mitra. Yeah, and I think that you're also highlighting that obviously well before this war started, there was obviously already a backlash happening against women's rights, and we all recall that from the mass protests and women standing strong, and then how that then plays out in the midst of war. I guess before we go to, Sabine and Soraida, I guess I'd like to ask you, I mean, really, what would you like to see from the Australian government in this moment?
Absolutely. I think a bit of constraints and commitment to the women peace security agenda, the 4 principles of the participation in the peace building: prevention, protection, and recovery. I think we as a nation have responsibility towards ensuring that this war doesn't end to destruction. The language of the President Trump around taking back to the Stone Age is a threatening language and has significant impact on people living in the country. It's very easy for me to speak about that in my privileged position as I look outside and looking at the peaceful sky, but it's about life of people. Impacting and attacking universities, attacking hospitals, attacking institutes that have worked around Pasteur Institute, that I remember as a child, I have been having vaccination being built into that, and destroying that has significant impact on not only now, but on the recovery of that. So I think all the Western countries, European countries, Australia, needs to hold on to the constraints and accountability, and ensuring that the war doesn't actually destroy the infrastructure that's about people. And I get challenged on that. I get challenged by diaspora that are hurt, that are impacted. And I think anybody in the diaspora has families there. So people are not closing their eyes to the impact of the bombs. But people also have lived through really, really challenging environment. But I think we still have an accountability to ensure the resources are not being destroyed, that it doesn't like sort of further marginalize people. I think the other thing for me is the accountability around semi-jihadists, like, that are crossing around the border, that have significant impact on the life of the women on the bordering, like, towns and villages. If we think about, like, Baluchistan, if we think about Kurdistan, that people are not being get caught between those sort of, like, dynamic. And that's happening, like, as if you hear US talks about the change of the regime in Iran, there has been no change of the regime. The bombing hasn't actually created a change. It has made people more vulnerable and has given more power, I believe. That's my personal views, and I don't think necessarily shared by all diaspora, has given more power to the regime to some extent.
Yeah, and I understand. I mean, there's very mixed views in the diaspora, and I think, as you say, you can welcome, some challenge. You can be anti-regime or concerned about the impact of the regime without actually endorsing this war and seeing it as the right.
And I think maybe, Michelle, if I add one more thing into that, I think, like, for us in Australia is just like really be aware of the risk of, like, far right and pushing it to the further. This is not a war of one religion against the other. This is actually a war that has no precedent. I think that's the critical part for us, and not to just, like, fall into the trap of the rise of the racism that we see in our home, and how does it impact globally?
Well, exactly. And I mean, it's a war also where, obviously, an illegal war. We all, I think, on this call are sort of strongly condemning, the US and Israel having an illegal attack on Iran. This was not their place to attack Iran, and has now had sort of devastating impacts on the population, including women and girls, as you've highlighted, Mitra. Thank you for sharing, and we'll come back if there are other questions for you later in the call. Let's go to you now, Sabine. I think we've all sort of seen today, just to hear devastating news overnight, that a ceasefire has not been extended to Lebanon, which is just, quite frightening to see how actually attacks are intensifying. So, and as sort of highlighted at the start, more than 20% of the population has been displaced already in a very short period of time. So we'd love to hear from you about, what's happening on the ground right at this moment.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for the invite. Actually, what we are witnessing right now in Lebanon is a rapidly escalating humanitarian situation. It's a catastrophe. As you mentioned, when the reports of a ceasefire deal 2 days ago went in the news, people for the first time in 2 weeks had a really sense of hope. I remember we slept, okay, tomorrow it will be quiet. But and we truly believed that this nightmare will end. But to the shock, we woke up to bombings, to people being killed. Yesterday was one of the deadliest day that Lebanon has witnessed since March 2nd. More than 250 people were killed, more than 1,000 injured. This is only in one day. And it's horrible. People live in fear, uncertainty. It's really terrifying. So after the hope was short lived, but within hours, it's like we're living in hell. So as you mentioned, also 20% of the Lebanese population are now internally displaced. I believe the numbers are growing more and more, and the situation is changing rapidly. I will not say day by day, hour by hour. Schools now are shelters. Everything is disrupted, and today is a mourning day. It's an official mourning day in Lebanon, and they are still trying to rescue people under the rubbles, and there's no safe place. For us, there's no safe place. They are hitting without warnings, even without forced displacement orders. So it can happen to anyone everywhere. And as Mitra was mentioning, like it's not only about the scale of destruction or how many people displaced. It's about people's life, uh, the children, the woman, the girl. Civilians are being attacked. Infrastructure is being attacked in Lebanon. Health workers, hospitals now are overwhelmed due to the scale of the situation. So it's a catastrophe. We had hopes that a ceasefire will take place, but it did not happen. We don't know. People here live in uncertainty and fear. And it's really sad for me as a Lebanese woman. I'm 45 years old. And there's an app in Lebanon that calculates how many years of your life you've spent in war. Apparently, more than half of my life as a person was spent in the war in Lebanon. All kind of wars, civil war, war with Israel, all kinds of war. So this is truly like devastating for people, for me as a mom, as a Lebanese woman, and also for everyone in Lebanon. You should not face this. It's a lot of wars in one lifetime. This is what keeps resonating in my mind. A lot of wars in one lifetime. Yani, this is the situation. And also, as you were mentioning, like women and girls are affected more in crisis, and especially in Lebanon, there's no safe place. The scale of the humanitarian situation is really big, so they are affected. This is why, as ActionAid, we are working with a lot of women and girls, with our partner on the ground, to be able to support women and girls, to provide them with dignity kits, with safe places, with protection services and psychosocial support, just to give them back just a little bit of safety and dignity after everything that they've been going through. But also from the ground and working with a lot of women and young women who are volunteering. Women in Lebanon are not only survivors, they are also responders, first responders, and leading the response. I can see a lot of young women volunteering, trying to support their communities as much as they can with the restriction, from the situation. For example, yesterday we had distribution. It had to stop because of what's happening in the Bekaa and in Baalbek. So we are monitoring the situation hour by hour, trying to support people as much as we can. But I want to highlight that the needs are really huge on the ground. It's exceeding the expectation and the capacity of people in Lebanon to respond. Lebanon is a very small country. 250 people in one day is an alarming number, is a huge number. 20%, more than 20% of people in Lebanon are displaced. Now, more than 25% or around 25% of Lebanese territory are occupied. I'm just like giving you this example to tell you how difficult the situation is in Lebanon. And hopefully, we always have hope that better days will come. People are tired. We are tired. We are exhausted. We don't want this anymore. We want to live in peace. It's right for everyone, every woman, every child, every girl, every person, everyone here in Lebanon. They have the right to live in peace. People are displaced in less than 2 years, two or three times. And now the displacement is continuing. People don't know if they will be able to return to their homes again, or even if they will find their homes still standing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's
thanks,
very hard for us to go through this again and again and again. It's a cycle. We want this cycle to end.
Yeah, I was reading some of the feedback from the team in Lebanon, that you shared earlier, and just to see people heading back home to the south only to have to come back again to
Yeah.
to
After a
flee
few
again.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, you can understand just how unstable the situation is, and just to live through that, and of course it also definitely starts to resonate with what's happened in Gaza to see, similar
Yes.
things, attacks on hospitals, on journalists, occupation of land. And so, it has been frightening to watch. But I will say, by the end of this call, we're also hoping people can join in action to continue to call for Australia to really push strongly for the ceasefire to be extended to Lebanon. We need peace in the region. People need peace. And one thing that struck me, I mean, you mentioned the impacts on women and girls, and I know I've heard you share stories just around what it's like for women to have to pack up in the middle of the night and take it, to not be able to take anything, just to leave with the family. And yeah, I guess I wonder if you could just share a little bit about what it is like to be in this kind of situation as a woman, how that's sort of different, and some of the urgent needs that women
Yeah.
have.
Women in Lebanon are not only experiencing the displacement and loss like everyone, they are also carrying the responsibility of holding families together. They are carrying their children, leaving their homes with nothing in their hands, sometimes supporting elderly or injured people with very limited resources while dealing with their own trauma and fear. For example, as a mother, I'm afraid, I'm traumatized, but I need to show my kids that I'm strong. So you need to take care of your family, and at the same time, you're living the fear and all trauma from your childhood because you experienced war many times. So it's very hard on women, and also their safety is also at risk in overcrowded shelters and informal settings. There's a little privacy for women, limited protection, and increased risk of GBV or gender based violence and exploitation. So they should have access to essential services, access to reproductive health care, to psychological, psychosocial support, and even basic hygiene, because it's becoming very difficult. And we know from working in many emergencies that always the needs of women are sometimes left behind because women they have the tendency to take care of their children, their families. They put their families first. So they always forget their needs. So this is why the needs of women and girls should be a priority for us, and the protection of women and girls also in this kind of crisis. And as I mentioned, I will keep mentioning this, the needs are growing very rapidly. And I know we have a very big community of Lebanese diaspora in Australia. So I invite everyone to support Lebanon in يعني in everything they can.
Thanks, Sabine.
Thank
And
you.
I can see here as well that someone has shared the assessment of from the gender-based violence area of responsibility around gender-based violence risks in the Lebanon crisis. So if people are interested in learning more about what is happening on the ground, because yes, if violence is there in normal times, it's definitely increases and gets worse in a time of crisis. I think we all know this as humanitarian actors, and it is really important that we prioritize protection. But yeah, and thank you for highlighting. I mean, I think this is the thing we see, the incredible sort of leadership that women play in both their families, their communities, in trying to hold things together in a crisis, and but also that does mean that often those needs are overlooked and often under prioritized, particularly when decisions are made elsewhere around what gets prioritized, what gets resourced. We'll go to you next, Soraida, and to the situation in Palestine, and let's start with Gaza. I know we've spoken to you previously, about the huge impact of Israel's genocide on Gaza, everything from wiping out, healthcare systems, and the huge load women had to carry around caring responsibilities. Obviously, that we saw increased violence of all forms. I guess one of the things that's often, we often are asked, I mean, we're told we have a ceasefire in Gaza, but everything tells us that's probably not the situation, and definitely not what's happening on the ground. So I guess we wanted to hear, 2.5 years since this genocide began, what is the current situation in Gaza? For some reason, we just can't hear you, Soraida. I don't know what's happened with your headphones.
Okay.
Still can't hear you. We could hear you for a moment, so I don't know. You might even find it's easier just to speak without them.
So I will.
Yes, that's fine. We can hear you like that. Oh, now we can't. Sorry, Soraida, we still can't hear you. No. Do you want to remove the headphones completely? Can you hear us? If you pull the headphones out? No. Oh dear. We could hear a little
Video.
moment. I don't know if it's a connection issue, but because I think we could hear a little bit from you, but then it kept cutting out.
Now.
Yes, now is perfect.
Okay, so this is what I will keep my place here.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Sabine and Mitra. It's nice to meet you. Thank you, Michelle. As you said, as you well said, Michelle, yes, there is no ceasefire. Nothing has been changed a lot. Maybe the scale, very unfortunate to say that, the scale of the number of killing has been becoming low, but it's continuous. It's continuing, and there is no ceasefire at all because the killing is still going on, and even it's adding more dangerous situation for the Palestinian people in Gaza because there is the Israelis draw something and they call the yellow line. And it was before the genocide, they called it the buffer zone, and then the yellow line, and now the orange line. And there are people trapped between what they consider when they say yellow line and the orange line. There are people trapped, and every day people are being killed. Those who are now trapped between two lines that are not public, are not seen, are not communicated to people. What is this line? What is the other line? So people in the night are surprised that they are being killed in their tents. So the thing, and with what's happening in the region, the killings and the situation in Gaza is going under the table. But the situation is still very bad. When Sabine was talking about Lebanon, again, very unfortunate to say, I not only I understand what Sabine says, it's the repetition of what's happening in Gaza and is starting in the West Bank is very bad. Now, as international organizations, we have to do coordination so that if any organization wants to go between the two lines to serve people trapped between these two imaginary lines full of the military Israelis that are there, there is a lot of coordination, there is a lot of paperwork, there is a lot of bureaucracy. There are some areas now in Gaza that the international organizations have not been able to go and see the people and see what's happening there. So, and the lines are cut. So there are some areas within Gaza that are in a very dangerous situation now, and they keep moving the lines. They keep moving the size of the lines and the movement where the people can or cannot move. And it happened to children that they don't know these lines and the borders of the lines, and they cross the line that they say, they are killed. And this is happening every day. So there is no ceasefire. It's something discussed, it's the genocide is still going on with a different form of making it. The international organizations, and here I will say, it's the humanitarian system of international organizations. And I always say, humanitarian situation means rights are being violated.
The Palestinian people is not a humanitarian case. Lebanese people is not a humanitarian case. We are not humanitarian cases. Its rights are being violated, and there is no accountability to who is violated these rights. There is somebody killing, and nobody is making this killer accountable. So the situation becomes humanitarian. But to keep looking and dealing with the situation of Palestinian people in Gaza, Lebanon, and the West Bank, humanitarian, it also touches the dignity of people and touches the way people see themselves, because people from the night to the morning, they start being dependent on the aid that these organizations can bring. So if these organizations can bring hygienic kits, food kits, clothes, then they can practice a bit of these rights that are violated and, preserve a little of the dignity. So this is very important, and this is one of the ideas of the colonizers. It's a colonizing system that is being expanded and is not stopped, and a non-stopped colonizing system sees the people, and this is not now, and this is not, as the Israeli minister said, that the Palestinians are half humans, animal humans, in the beginning of the genocide. It has been from years and years from the colonizing powers. So it is continuing. So if we should see and look at what's happening in Gaza and Palestine and Lebanon, a continuation of this colonizing mentality that has been not stopped. So it's not something new. Maybe the new and the modern is the discourse, is the tools, is the way they dress, is the way they address others, but it's the same mentality of seeing the others in an inferior place. Here comes, when we talk about women, we see the intersectionality: woman, class, gender, religion, education, and colonization, occupation, and patriarchy. All them together gives a mix of challenges. A mix is a chain. It's a chain of rights that faces a chain of violations. So when one violation happens, the other violation comes as a result. The third violations naturally will be in place. So our situation in this place, in this area, is human rights are being violated. I know that so many people are losing the faith in the international humanitarian law, in the international human rights law. But it's not what I am talking about. I'm talking about the old thinking of the very nature that when human lives, this is the rights, and this is what's being a challenge by this. But what's happening? So here is where we come. Women are made of all these elements together. In Gaza, for example, that the things has not changed. But look, there is a shortage of cooking gas. So families are resorting again to using the wood. And not only wood, they go to the houses that have been destroyed, and they take the furniture that has been destroyed in these houses, plastic, carton, all these materials, and they use to cook. And this means the diseases for the children, especially, that they get close to this fire where the mother is cooking and the children come, so they get, all these diseases in their chest because of the what's going out of these poisonous materials. But they have to do this to cook and to get warm. And these children, and we know many children, many women, talking to them, is they take the children to the hospital. They can find antibiotics, and sometimes they don't find the antibiotics. So this is one challenge for the mothers who have the children. Another challenge is the 50-something in Gaza and 70-something in the West Bank, the pregnant women who are not finding the food, the nutrition they need, the care they need, and if they she's going to give birth, and so many challenges, she might not get to the hospital, and if she gets, she might not find the bed where to sleep, so that she will have the children. So it's the same challenges before what they call the ceasefire. So if we want to see is, okay, there are trucks coming with the aids, with the bringing the aid, but it's not sufficient. What is getting into Gaza is still very, very little of the needs. It's a temporary a food that people are taking. The international organizations are being able to secure 1.5 million, 1 million, and sometimes less, one meal per day. So 1 meal per day for children is dangerous, because we know children, and those who have been raising children, they know that it's 3 meals, is very nutritious meal, is the milk, is what we have to give the children. In Gaza, this is not happening. So the consequences to come are also very concerned. The UNDP, for example, is talking about the need for funding to clean the dumping sites, because the whole infrastructure has been destroyed. So people are, the dumping sites of all the residues of the people, when they are of the households, they need money to go and deal with these dumping sites that are also affecting the health, especially pregnant women and children. So one of the things that we see is the work that international organizations are doing, are organized in different clusters. Every day we have meetings. Every day we tell each other what we did and how we did it. And then in the end of the day, you go back home knowing that all this money, all these efforts, all this time are not enough. Because international political will is not existing, because nobody is making the Israeli occupation accountable, because of the political global situation. So all the efforts, there are more efforts than before. There is more experience gained from the international organizations, a humanitarian system working, but is not enough, is still very bad. My last point is about winter, that we experienced tens of the people being flooded by water. No infrastructure. All this water was coming into the tents. People were out without any tent, without any coverage. Organizations couldn't make all what they needed to keep them warm and to give them the tents. So they go with friends and families, and they are still waiting for a real ceasefire, so that rehabilitation and rebuilding can start. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Soraida. And I think you're highlighting some really important points there, that if we label this purely as a humanitarian crisis, we risk failing to understand the huge rights violations that are taking place right now, and the lack of accountability that is being placed on Israel for the denial of food, the denial of land, the continued occupation and colonization of Palestine. And it's important that we don't lose that political aspect, and perhaps how we also think about ways we can continue to support people in need, but also really focus on some of the politics of the crisis, and how we can also step up our advocacy efforts, which are critical at this moment. Just as you called, Mitra, for accountability, we need to see greater accountability, from our global leaders in this situation. I also wanted to go to the West Bank, and I'll just say, because in a moment we will have some time for questions. So if there is anything you'd like to know from any of our speakers, please do put your questions in the chat. We hope to come to them if we have some time. But Soraida, because you're in the West Bank, we don't often hear about what's happening, but what we do know is that, obviously things have become increasingly oppressive in the West Bank. There's increasing violence. So, yeah, I guess we'd like to hear what's really also happening on the ground there, in terms of the Israeli occupation and how that's intensifying in this moment.
Thank you for the question, Sabine. Michelle, yes, the West Bank is lately, we can say the minimum is like 10 to 15 military raids are happening in the same time. So one raid is in this village, and then the other refugee camp is attacked, and then so it's there has been a very notorious increased military raid to houses. Increase in settler violence at the same time. The settlers' activity and violence has raised, and they are protected, by the military. They themselves are armed. They have their guns, so they are killing more people. They are burning houses. They are burning the trees and the crops of people. So there are many people, many families, households who lost the main resource of their living. It's because they come, they are armed, they burn the house, people escape, nobody's protecting. When we say protection and when we say the need to protection is very important, because nobody's protecting. In the middle of the night, a family has to flee, has to escape. When they escape, the settlers come to the house and they burn everything. When they come back, nobody, and some instances, they couldn't come back because the settlers wanted to be in this house to then become like a settlement. And this is what they are doing. Another thing that has to do with the movement in general and with women and girls in specific is that in our society, like so many other societies, that it's patriarchal based, so the movement of women going, coming, and the girls is monitored. So if you go to the school, okay. If you go to the work, okay. If you go to see your friend, let's see when and how. This monitoring of the movement of women is even challenged more by 950 to 1,000 checkpoints and gates, military gates and points. Some of them are fully stuffed with with Israeli militaries, and they don't allow you to pass. Some of them has a schedule. The one near the office where and the city where I live, one of them opens at 9 in the morning and closes at 4. So you cannot pass this checkpoint before before this time or after this time. You cannot move. There are other partial checkpoints that make you, when you are going in the street and you know that there is a checkpoint, but you don't know if the soldiers are there. So you have to go and check. If the soldiers are there, you have to come back. And if it's open, you pass. So it's this uncertainty in your life. You cannot plan. You cannot say, I'm going to do this tomorrow. And moving from Ramallah to Jenin, for example, I cannot. I have to be ready that I might come back from the road because it's not safe. Not only safe, they close the checkpoints. So we receive every day alerts that these checkpoints are open, these gates are closed, this checkpoint just closed. And there are so many WhatsApp done by so many people voluntarily to tell each other which checkpoints are open and which no. So it's a kind of life that in the city where you live, there are like 5 checkpoints surrounding you, and you always don't know if you can go out or not. This makes the level of living it's less than always, because people cannot go out and seek more economic opportunities. So the poverty is higher in the West Bank. There is a lot of protection needed. And if one of the things that we say is, one, come and protect all these international forces. Some people and some women, when we talk to them, they say, isn't there a protection forces of the UN? Why they don't come? They should come. So this is one of the recommendations maybe I am carrying by women when we talk to them. politically, I don't know. If you ask me, maybe I will have another opinion. But I'm carrying, what women are telling us now. Women in the places where the settlers attack and where the military raids happen, they stay in the house with the children. There is no schools since the war against Iran started. So women and children are in the houses. And this is very, very concerned for the woman because she's protecting the house. She's protecting the children. Some parents, like in El Khalil, it's a city in south of the West Bank, some men are not going to work to protect the family, to be with the family. If the settlers will attack, he wants to be with them. He wants to be there to protect, maybe not protect, to help and carry the children and fly. We are concerned about something like 775,000 women who are pregnant, and they are living within these checkpoints, and maybe there is a clinic, maybe there is not a clinic. In the time when she's going to give birth, she has to run, and maybe the checkpoint is closed, so she has to come back. One of the activities that organizations are doing is training women to go back to old times of the woman that goes to the house and supports the woman giving the birth. So there is one organization that is training nurses, young nurses, to be ready in the village or in the near places and tell people that she's ready to go and help this woman if the checkpoint is closed. And still, women are still the backbone of the society, of the house. And what we are noticing is that many of them, as Sabine said, because me the same and Sabine the same, we are having traumas. We need mental support. So many women are experiencing this. It's not a taboo like before. I'm fine. I'm doing well. Women are talking about it more. So one of the first respondents to mental health are a lot of volunteers who are working with the Palestinian civil organizations, especially women organizations, with the CBOs, Alianza, ActionAid Spain. We worked with 20 CBOs. More than half of them have mental health workers so that they can, work. And what we see and what we hear from women is that if you go and play with them and do a game and it's 10 to 15 minutes talking about their feelings, it's like she feels light again. It's very important to keep working closely with women and supporting community-based organizations because they are the ones close. They are the ones within the limits that the checkpoints put. So organizations like us might not be able to go to another city. They are there. So this is one of the strategies that we are now putting more effort with it. So that I don't take more time, is just one of the statistics. 14% of how Palestinian households in the West Bank, in Gaza, are higher, and we don't know the exact number, are headed by women. So there is thousands of households headed by women, and these households are the poorer. We don't want them to be the poorer. So this is one section or one group of women that we want to also pay attention to them. When we say Palestinian women, is not Palestinian woman, is Palestinian woman. If she's internally displaced, or she's in the refugee camp, or she's in the city, or if she is in the village. So it's not one Palestinian woman. It's who we are talking about. And the last point is, and maybe this is not a place here, but just to pay attention. When we talk about GBV, it has to do with the context and the place where we are. So some people say, when there are crises and when the genocide is going on, we expect money, the raise of GBV cases. Who told you? Come and ask, come and see, and be sure of what you are saying. Yes, there is in the beginning, there wasn't the raising because everybody was running for their life. So, but men were not even have the time to think about raising a woman. So everybody was running for their life. After a while, when they settled, yes, we have to be very worried about these issues. So it's not generalizing, and it's important to give always not only the voice, the credibility, and be ready to listen to women who are in the situation that we are talking about, what they say, what it means. Because this is where we learn. And what we are learning is that with a genocide, the discourse has changed. The meanings has changed. Peace is not the same. Peace doesn't mean peace. For me and for Abiaad living in Rafah, in Gaza, very different. So the discourse has changed. The wording has changed. And so this is important for us in international organizations when we talk about, for example, targeted people. Who is targeting whom? The local community. Who's the locals? So these things are one of the learning lessons that with all this situation, we are learning a lot. Thank you. Sorry if I more that time.
No, thank you, Soraida. And I think you paint just what just the huge challenges, but also the importance of not simplifying things. And and even when we talk about women, there are groups of women who are more vulnerable. I think we have to be careful of generalizations and also look at where we're targeting efforts. And as you say, it's always about listening to people, being guided by local voices, local perspectives. And I mean, that's critical. It's obviously a core part of ActionAid's work on the ground as well. I didn't see too many questions. I think people were engrossed in listening to all three of you. And I guess we've only got a couple of minutes now. So I really just wanted to throw back to all of you just with a final message to the people who've taken time to join tonight. Just, what would you like to leave? How can we, strengthen our solidarity with the three of you and the situations in Iran, Lebanon, and Palestine? Mitra, I'll go to you first.
Sure, thank you. I think just maybe there was a comment or a question. Absolutely, the war on Iran is illegal. I think it has broken all the international laws. And I think some of the challenges maybe for us is about the role that we can play in really reinvigorating the accountability toward the international instruments. And as you said at the start, and as I said, the absence of the war doesn't mean the peace. And I think, Soraida just talked about that. It's about looking at the peace from the concept of the people impacted and what that means from them. And I think that's a role that we all can play. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitra. Sabine?
Thank you. My final message is Lebanon and women in Lebanon and across the region are not only survivors of wars or crises, they are also reading responses, supporting their families, holding communities together, but they need support, they need protection, and their voices must be heard. Solidarity matters. What we can do, we can speak out, we can support the humanitarian efforts and call for an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon and in the whole region. And always remember, behind every number, there is life and people who cannot continue to live in uncertainty and under constant threat. Thank you.
Thanks, Sabine. And I know we've put the link in the chat for where you can donate to support ActionAid's Middle East appeal, which is supporting both Lebanon and Palestine. And I'll wrap up by sharing some of the action people can take also to speak up and support those efforts. Soraida, final message from you.
Thank you, Michelle, and everybody. I would like to tell the people that by donating, you don't give only money. You support lives, and you might save a life. So don't underestimate any donation that you can do. This is one thing. Another thing is accountability, as Mitra said, accountability, but I will put 3 lines under accountability, because the lack of accountability is going to take you all, as we all are under the same. We have been saying for years what's happening in Palestine with this colonization, with military occupation. We pay the price, but it affects everybody. Now we are seeing how it's affecting more and more and more people. So it saves us all by supporting, by donating, by raising the voice, but being but choose who represents you, by talking to your parliament people in your parliaments, and and political people. Ask them, because you also are saving the future of your children when this area of the world is in peace. So we all are interrelated. For me, it's horrible what's happening in Lebanon. It's like, why should any other also leave what we have? It's enough. It's enough. We had the genocide. We have 70-something years under military occupation. Why Lebanon should live the same? So it's us all. We all save ourselves. Why this happening in Iran? So it's becoming more and more, and we all are responsible to say no in a different ways.
Thank you, Soraida. And a huge thank you to the 3 of you for joining us tonight. And particularly, I mean, you're working in such challenging contexts. I know Sabine and Soraida, and obviously Mitra, you feel this personally as well. We've valued your time and you sharing what's happening on the ground and just what's important to you in this crisis. I think we've heard a very strong message: support the response, but also speak up. And we must speak up for accountability. We must speak up for a ceasefire in Lebanon. We have put a couple of actions in the chat, obviously, where you can donate to ActionAid's Middle East appeal, but also how you can join at least a few thousand people around Australia in calling on our Prime Minister to do more, to use his political pressure to call for a ceasefire to be extended to Lebanon, but also for accountability on Israel and US for the gross violations that have happened in terms of starting this war, and for Australia to remove its military assistance that's supporting it. So we hope you'll join those actions. And thank you so much to everyone who joined us tonight. Thanks once again to our wonderful speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a safe day.
Bye.